Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So in this video we are going to talk about virtual machine disk management. So we are going to talk about what type of disks we can create in virtual machine, what is their performance, how can we create the data disk. Also in this video we are going to talk about how we are going to encrypt those data disk, maybe OS disk or data disk, as well as we are going to talk about the snapshots and shared disk virtual machine. Azure provides the share disk which can multiple virtual machines can share. Let's get started. So let's talk about the disk type. So we can have three different type of disk in virtual machine. One is OS disk, which is by default created whenever you create the virtual machine, because this is a disk where the operating system going to be installed. The second is temporary disk. This temporary disk is approximately 14 GB and it holds the data temporarily. As long as your virtual machine running, your data is available to your system or however you are accessing. But in case if you deallocate or shut down your virtual machine, disk is lost. All the data on this disk are lost, and whenever you restart you will get the clean slate hard disk, and again you have to get the data. And third is data disk. This is a persistent data disk. All the data is stored in this disk will be persistent. OS disk is by default based on the image size we selected while creating the virtual machine. We have a default size, but we can change the size. So as per my experience, their size always be greater than the size we selected, which is default size for this image. Image means whatever size means 2 core, 3 core, whatever in the first step when you select the size of the virtual machine, that is SKU. The next is hardware perspective, what kind of disks are available. First one is ultra disk. This is a newly provided. This ultra disk has size, means ultra disk is very high input throughput, ultra disk is very high throughput and IOPS, and very highly available, or means you can say wherever we need critical data inputs outputs, we use this disk. For example, if you want to creating a virtual machine where you need to install the SQL Server or Oracle or many other databases, so this can be used there, but it has some limitation that it does not provide in availability sets, or it can only have a data disk. You cannot use as a OS disk. So this is a limitation. If you want to go more in detail, I have put the link in the description. You can go there and find out more about this disk types. Second is premium SSD V2. This is mainly we generally use for production servers and production high criticality or high availability data, where we want high availability and critical data. We generally use this premium SSD V2, and it has again high input output, and again cost wise it's very high. The second comes standard SSD. Next is premium SSD that we can use again on production web servers and others. Third is standard SSD. This is a medium one where generally we use in dev or QA environment, and where non-critical services available want to host. And last one is standard HDD, where we want to store the data which is infrequently used, or maybe we want to store some backup and everything, so that for that purpose this are stored. So before we dive into demo, let's talk about some other aspects like shutting down the VM versus deallocating the VMs. So shutting down VMs means your all resources are stopped, but they are still allocated to the VM. They are not in use, they are still allocated in the VM, but that also incurring your compute cost. So while your system is shut down, it will be allocated, resources will be still allocated, and they incur the cost. So for example, your IP is non-static public IP. It will remain the same when you restart your VM. But in case of deallocation, in that case, your all resources, compute resources are deallocated, and they will not incur any cost. For example, IP also will be deallocated and released. So when you restart your VM, all this compute cost will start incurring, and same time this you will get a new IP, static, non-static public IP. So this is the difference, this is the main difference in it. So you will get a little extra cost if you shut down and do not deallocate, if you're not using your virtual machines. Okay, let's create first a virtual machine. Okay, we have already resource group. Then I'm going the name demo VM, and I'm not going to talk about anything here because we have already discussed in the previous video. So I'll put the link on top of it. Okay, let's talk about the disk part here. So here we discuss it is creating the image by default is 127, and we can have a what the size we can create. The size we can specify here. Now here it is what kind of SSD we are looking for. Right now I'm creating the premium SSD, but what based on the requirement you can decide here which premium SSD we need. And now next here platform managed key, because here we have two options: platform management managed key and customer managed key. So one example here is that we always have disk encrypted. If we don't provide any customer key, then it will always be platform managed keys. And we'll come to the customer managed key in the next section, but let's talk about select. By default it is always encrypted. Now we're just creating a VM. We are not adding a new disk here, data disk. If you want to, we can add from here, but in this demo we'll add this later. Networking, I'll keep same as it is. I'll just rename this one to new name, and I'll keep as it is everything. Keep everything like this, same, and review and create. So it will create the VM. So now it is validation pass. VM is being created. So we'll come back once the VM is ready. Let's go to resource and connect, and let's see how it looks. Connect. I'll download a file, select here, click connect. So it is connecting. So once the server is ready, we'll come back and start looking into the different part of the servers. Ready, it's booted completely. Let's go and check its drives. So we have one C drive which is 126 GB, which was selected earlier, and then temporary data disk which is 14 GB free available, and there's some data already there. So here you see saying data loss warning here. So let's put some data here and restart the machine. Let's see how it what happens. I'm putting some garbage character here and save it. Okay, so when you come here, let's reboot the system, and I'm just shutting down it. I'm disconnected from here and coming back to here, overview, and stop. We'll restart it and see what happens. So let's start it. Okay, machine is running state. See, here we came back to D drive and our file is disappeared because we have restarted the machine. Now next step is we created with another data disk. So for that we'll go back to that server, we'll disconnect from here, come back to this machine, and here we come here, disks. So we can add a new machine here, create and attach a new disk. So select here, create, disk name, data disk. I want to keep it premium SSD only. By default I'll keep the size 20 GB, and this is max IFS. I cannot select any other option. Only option I have a platform managed key. Then read only and apply. So this step is creating disk. It will update virtual machine, and virtual machine also updated. So I have to check whether it is actually associated with this disk with the VM or not. So I will log in this VM again. Go there, C drive, and we don't see any disk here yet. So let's see. And disk will go to disk utility because it will not appear here until we mount it. So disk, go to disk utility, create and format the partitions. So here we see there are two disk 2. One is data and another one is, so scroll down, then we have an unmounted space 20 GB we created, which is unallocated. So we have to allocate first, initialize disk, and keeps like similar to this, and I have initialized it. Now we create a simple volume and minimum disk space 8 MB. I'm using entire GB. Simple volume. Next we'll give it a drive letter E, and next finish TFS and finish. So now we have a 3 disk space. So let me put some file here. We will deallocate again and reallocate and see if the drive is available there or not. So I'm disconnecting, going back to overview, stop, and wait for a few minutes. Now I'm restarting. So we don't need to download the RDP file again because we didn't have this IP address change, because this IP address is static by default. So only if non-static IP address is there, then only it will be refreshed, and every time it will reallocate the new IP address. But here we don't need to. So come here, start. Once it is ready, we'll come back and check whether we have a data there or not. Okay, now it is in running state. I'll come back, log into this. So go to C drive. Here we have a 2-3 files. Test file, when you try to open, it will not open because this file cannot find this file, but because it was in data disk. But we'll go to E drive and see if we have a file there or not. File already there, file data is there, so we are all. Next is we'll talk about the encryption. So before we start the encryption, we need to create the secure vault. So let's come back and create a secure vault on the Azure cloud. Key vault, create. Okay, this is our key vault, pricing tier standard, and it will be deleted in 7 days. And next, access configuration, vault will use the vault access policy, virtual, and we have to select Azure disk encryption from volume encryption here. And next, networking, public network access. I'm keeping all these things as it is, because my intention right now to be able to store the secret into key vault, and virtual machine to be able to get the key vault secret from key vault and encrypt and decrypt the data. So I'm not going to going in detail of the key vault. Review and create. We are creating our key vault. Okay, our resource is ready. Now resource ready. Now we will go to resource, create the keys. We'll create one generate, and key name VM inc key. I'm keeping RSA, I'm keeping as it is. I'm not changing anything. I do not set activate. There's no expiration date here. So let's create. So our encryption key is ready. Now next step is create encryption key set. This encryption set. So here I'm using the same resource group which I've been using so far. NPS disk inc set in East US only. Azure key vault and keys. Encryption at rest with customer managed key. Select the key vault. Okay, probably we have to wait for some time before even we check see the key vault here. Let's come back again. I'm coming here back, create, and here let's see if comings or not. Okay, so we got our key here, and so pulse detection is required, so we have to go to this key vault. So we have to come to the key in key vault, click on enabled. We have to enable it, enable the pulse detect protection, and then save it. Come back this one, and again I think we have to wait for, okay, we can select the key, this key, but same time we also have to give the name disk enc key set, and select the group. Next, we have already selected key vault, we selected key, and we have only one version, so select the one version. Auto key rotation, select an identity. Okay, next, tag, review, and create. Once our encryption key set is created, we'll come back to the virtual machine and enable this key set. Let's go to resource. We have to grant to access. Now there's error. To associate a disk, image, or snapshot with this disk encryption set, you must grant permission to the key vault. So here, when we click here, it will automatically grant the permission, so we don't need to worry about it. Now come back and go to our virtual machine. First, we cannot change it, we cannot decrypt it until we deallocate it. So first we have to stop this virtual machine and then come back to disks and do the encryption, and then we enable it. Okay, it is stopped, deallocated. Let's come back to disks. It may be, so we have a first this OS disk. Let's go to OS disk and then we have a encryption here. Then by default is a platform managed key. We'll select the customer managed key, and we already created one description key set. We select this key set and save it. Similarly, we come back to data disk, and same thing, we'll come back to encryption. By default is platform managed key, and come back to disk management customer managed key, save it and refresh it. That is it, and it will encrypt it with these keys. Remember, you cannot, if these disks are in use and associated with any VM and VM is on, you cannot change the encryption method. Once it is done, you can deallocate it, change the encryption method, and you can do the encryption, and you can restart the machine again. Customer managed key in both the cases. Let's go to VM and start, and it should, in fact, it is completely transparent, should be transparent to the user, and there should not be no impact in both the cases. Only from security perspective, we are encrypting with our own key rather than platform managed keys. About disk snapshot means we can create a multiple disk with this snapshot of the one disk. So here's the requirement. If you remember, in the previous section we created one file in the data disk, test disk file. So come back to that, let's go to that file and do some modifications, so will you know what we did. So come back here, open our data disk test. We created this test file, and in this text file, this is test for data disk and created on demo VM 1 demo VM. Okay, I'm saving it. So what I want to do, that I disconnect it. Let's create a new first create a disk snapshot. Where should be disks? This is our disk, data disk, and there should be a snapshot option. Okay, here we have a create a snapshot. So on the top corner, on the top bar, we click on the create snapshot, and we'll give the name data disk snap st. Okay, and a snapshot type full. Make a complete read-only copy of the selected disk, or save on storage costs by making a partial copy of the disk based on the difference between the last snapshot. So we are creating an incremental, and in case we don't need to select anything else because this is based on the HDD. Storage type, we are putting this into as standard HDD. Now next, encryption, we are keeping customer managed keys, because next is enable full access from all networks. Advanced, nothing here. Tag, we don't want to put any tags, and create a snapshot. Okay, so we have one snapshot ready, and the snapshot is in process. Meanwhile, let's start create another virtual machine. And here we have a normal disk, OS disk, and here we're going to create and attach a new disk. So create a new disk, and we are going to create a new empty disk. Rather than creating new empty disk, we'll create this from the snapshot, and we'll select the snapshot. We created one snapshot, 20 GB. Again, encryption is, it seems it is not coming here, so let's first create this with the platform managed key, and let's try to update it. Let's go to networking. I don't want to, okay, we have a same network. Management, I'm keeping same as it is, and last option is tags, review and create. Once it is done, we'll check. Okay, validation passed. Let's create this VM, and once it is done, I'll come back. Ready, and when we go to disk, we have a 2 disk here, disk 1 and this is again because, and the data disk is by default CMK because we selected snapshot from the where we already encrypted with the CMK. This is, it seems, happening. Next go so let's go to another machine, go to log into that machine and see if we can see that file we created through VM1 is available in VM2 also. So let's connect. So new volume F, we have this test, right? And if you open this, it will create it on VM. If you change here in this file, it's not going to impact further because it's a snapshot of the previous created from the snapshot. So whatever, it's just a kind of copy. So you make any changes here, it will not impact the original one, even the snapshot. So here our this section completed. In the next section, we're going to talk about Azure shared disks. So what is a shared disk? Shared disk means you have one single disk, but portion of the disk are utilized by the VM. So one disk can be shared between multiple VMs, and they can utilize particular portion of the size of the they share, but they cannot interfere between each other's data. So the space or volume is shared between these VMs, but there's no data, so they cannot create a resource. We are going to create a managed disk here. Resource group same, disk name shared nps shared disk, same zone, everything is same, and I'm using the size to 16 GB, and next encryption I'm using created managed disk. Let's come back to the VM1. We'll add another VM disk here, attach existing disk, and this existing disk is shared disk, and we have to enable this enable shared disk. And how many share we can enable? Maximum 2. And then we'll save it, and then we'll try to attach to our VM. Come back to VM, demo VM, and then we'll add this to disks, and we'll add and attach existing disk. Disk will be 16 GB shared. Now come back to another one. We'll come to another, go to another VM, VM2, and we'll add existing disk and add attach existing disk, and we'll select this one, size 16 GB, apply the changes,